What up, young scholars? It's your boy, the extra large professor of Dad, Cypher. And once again, we are doing another review and recap of In Treatment Week 2. And I brought a special guest with me, my wife, Dr. K, who is actually a counseling psychologist. And if you don't already know, the extra large professor is a professor of English. So I would look at In Treatment from the standard of pop culture, and she will look at it from a therapeutic standpoint. And before we get into this recap, we just want to make sure that you guys remember to click and subscribe. We're going to always give you some good content when it comes to In Treatment. Remember, for me, In Treatment is more than just a show. This is the show that inspired me to go out and get mental health. And we just finished Mental Health Month, but that doesn't mean that we don't do or need mental health all year long. So are you excited to be on the show?
I am. And let me just say, whatever I say is not in the professional capacity for therapeutic purposes. So don't hold me legally liable for anything.
All right. and I will give you wrong advice. So here we go.
There you go.
Let's go to Laila. From the beginning, what we find is that Brooke comes into her home with a slew of alcohol. I mean, it's like alcohol bottles all over the place. So you could tell her sobriety is in jeopardy and that sort of thing. And then what we find is, as the scene opens up, that Laila is outside and she's actually doing what millennials do. They do the recording of, hey, this is my therapist. She's melanated and that sort of thing. Once again, talking about the importance of seeing a person of color in the mental health field, because research shows only 4% of all psychologists are people of color. So, she kind of struck the lotto when it comes to Brooke. But one thing that I love this scene and how it sets up, because it's really talking about her as a storyteller. Mm-hmm. Because, Laila is coming in with this whole idea of, she is a storyteller, and that the relationship that she has with the 15-year-old is one in which is deep because they write their own narrative. She talks about how this 15-year-old has this sort of innocence, but they talk about deep poetry, and they, share this profound love that she hasn't been able to find at all. And in this particular episode as well, we get into a lot of the quote unquote daddy issues that's going on with Laila, where she explains that she has been involved in a series of car accidents. And rather than face any sort of, discipline or any sort of reaction from her dad, he pretty much just replaces each one. So she doesn't really, have that sort of, father-daughter relationship in which she's seeking. So it seems like, to me, it's a lot of attention seeking. What I found really profound in the episode was that she talked about her dream, and she describes a dream in which it was like chaos that took place. She physically picked her grandmother up. Her and her father were there. It was like some sort of chaotic event that took place. She tossed her grandmother into the back seat of the car, leaving her father, and she drives as fast as she can, only to find like this sort of white supremacist with a shotgun and that sort of thing, and how, she just plows forward, and that dream is like traumatic. And Brooke does an excellent job by showing how the recent events with like Trayvon Martin and Breonna Taylor and several others that we can't even name. It really talks about the impact, the post-traumatic stress has on young people. But I think one of the things that really sticks out to me in that episode that Brooke points out is that Laila seems to be fixed on regressing because she doesn't want to really move forward into the life of college. I don't know if she's afraid, but we talk about this trauma, and then she's latching on to this 15-year-old where she's regressing. So I guess, from a therapy standpoint, what do you think about Brooke? Not Brooke, Laila, really having this relationship with this 15-year-old?
I mean, first off, we're bordering on illegalities, depending on if now that there's question of Laila's integrity, we don't know what kind of relationship it is, although it does feel like she's grooming her to some degree because of her age. I don't think she would see it that way because she feels like the young lady is so mature, but that doesn't matter. I mean, by law, she's still a minor. I think she's trying to escape. I think that's what the dreams and all of that or the relationship seems like to me, is a way of escape. I've got all these pressures and I just want to be free. I want to be free. I want to have my own identity that's outside of my family. And this girl provides that, and that sense of innocence that she keeps talking about. She's very complex. She's complex. And I think it's probably overwhelming for her just being so bright to, have this sense of, I understand what's going on in the world. I understand that there's these racial issues. There's this inequality. There's all these pressures. And at the same time, she's kind of had pressures from her family to be a certain way. And then who is she? It's an identity crisis, who she is, how she wants to be going forward. I think there is a lot to unpack where she's concerned. And then we still don't know about her mom. And so I wondered about, I don't know if they've ever said the racial ethnic background of her mom, but that's probably a lot to do with it too. And this person that's in the background that she hasn't connected with, or there's something sinister about her or menacing about her that she's trying to get away from, but she knows that person, the guy, impacted how the woman is. I think there's just a lot. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you did. And you actually helped to remind me of some other things to take out, especially with your comment. We're talking about that whole idea of escape, because near the end of the session, she is saying that, her and the girl will escape, the 15-year-old will escape with her. And she talks about like even creating her own Cypher, different sort of language and that sort of thing to basically deceive the young 15-year-old's parents, who she describes as extra strict, and which is another area that she's probably drawn to her because she's kind of wanted in sort of craving that discipline. That's probably what even more draws her into that relationship. Also, the other thing is she talks about race, but she describes racism in a different sort of way. She was like, no one has called her the N-word, but she feels the presence of this supremacy, which lets me know that, that post-traumatic stress that young millennials are experiencing. It's like the racism isn't like in your face like in the 60s and 70s, but she still realized that she is privileged, and that at the same time, although she's privileged, she's still susceptible to the damage against the Black body. And so, it's just interesting. And, this, like you described, this character is very complex.
But I think to some degree, her grandma has told stories. And so any young person who's grown up in the suburbs, like just speaking for myself, who come out of a situation where they put you in a fancy school or tried to give you something different, you only know that you're different because somebody's taught you that you're different. And so and I think Grandma kind of alluded to that the first time when she's, I think, did she talk about her race as a Black girl and being lesbian and what that's going to be like out in the world? So she's already got these stories and this knowledge of what it is. So even if nobody's outright called her the N-word, she knows that something's different or where it could lead. So I think it's not only living in this time, but having the burden of that knowledge. I mean, it's freeing to just go around and you think, I think about, was it Gloria? They're like, who you are, Snowflake?
Let me tell you something, boy. You can march like the white man. You can talk like him. You can learn his songs. You can even wear his suits, but you ain't never gonna be nothing to him.
I think about that when you don't realize who you are, but she knows who she is and the importance of it because somebody's taught her that. But then there's this added weight of that too. So rather than just live in the privilege, there's still this idea that there's so much that's unfair. There's so much that could happen to me that she's still trying to grapple with.
I mean, it's going to be interesting. And, and this is just a question that I'll have out to the viewers. Do you think, and this is something that, I've been thinking about and mulling over as a father myself, are our children really prepared to go out into the world at the age of 18 and go, I know in America, we have this idea that we push our kids out and they go out to college and they go out and they experience the real world. But what happens if our kids feel like they're not prepared? How do we deal with that? So in the comments, please let me know what are your thoughts about, 18-year-olds and pushing them out of the nest to go out and to achieve the quote unquote American dream, in these particular instances, especially when we have trauma and that sort of things that young people are experiencing. Are we doing the right things by sending them out into the world? So
I have another question I'm thinking about. How much of our truth should we share? You and I talk about that all the time, but is it a burden or a buffer? I don't know. Just something in Laila's case just came to mind.
Yeah. And speaking of which, one of the things that I really liked that Brooke did to gain the trust was to share her narrative. And if we share our narratives with our children, how honest are we? And that's something to think about too. Again, put that in the comments and what you guys think about that.